Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to today's video where I am going to be answering a bunch of questions. And so what I decided to do was go back through all of my Sonlight videos, which I will link my Sonlight playlist because I have a lot of videos about Sonlight. And I have been asked many questions over the past 3 years or so about Sonlight, how we use it, all these things. And what I did is I just copied them out to a document here. It's actually 2 pages of questions that you guys have asked me over the years. And I just wanted to do a video about them and kind of just jump from question to question and topic to topic and cover a lot of different things. So I'm not sure if this will be a 2-part video. It might if I get chatty, but I will try to work fairly quickly through the questions. So I hope you're excited for this video. I hope you can glean some random information about how we use Sonlight and why it really works for our family. So stay tuned for a little bit of a Q&A session. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new, or welcome back, all the things. Let's just hop into some questions, you guys. So like I said, I have a lot of questions and I have bracketed them into subject matter. I think I have a just general one first, and then some science, some language arts, and some history, Bible, and literature questions. So you guys, it'll be really fun. Let's just see what you guys have asked me over the years. So the first question I have is, can you do a video about how you use this curriculum? Is it just the books and discussing, or how does it work? So that is actually kind of a common question that I get, is it's like, do you just read books and that's all? And yes and no. Yes, we just read a lot of books. But I feel like what I love about Sonlight and the instructor's guide is it guides you through how to discuss these books with your kids in a meaningful, educational sort of way. And it takes a little bit of practice. And honestly, when you're talking kind of some of the younger levels of Sonlight, it's not going to be a lot of that because a lot of it is just exposure, right? You're exposing your kids to times in history. You're exposing your kids to different types of science and things like that. So it's more like delight driven at that point. So it's not so much that you need a rigorous way to track how they're doing, because you're just exposing them. But as we have been stepping into some of the higher levels, higher elementary levels, we are not that far. But as I have been going up, I have been able to see how the books are strategically chosen to kind of interweave some of those questions. And so it's never just like read this textbook type information and quiz your kids. It's more like, here's this source and this source and this source, and you're doing this read aloud. And all of it can really paint a picture for your kids, and they end up learning a lot of things out of that. Will they hold everything? No. So I would say it's not just reading, but it is a lot of reading. So I'm not sure if that helps, but I do get that question often. And now to move into science. So I get a lot of questions about science because I have a PhD in science. I love science, and I do really like the Sonlight science. And I am actually planning a whole video dedicated to Sonlight science in November because it's like a STEM week, or science and technology week. And so I'll deep dive into some of these. So I won't go too far into this, but let's just start with some science questions. Would you consider using this, Sonlight Science, through high school, or what other options look like great alternatives? So the first thing to note is that Sonlight Science in high school is Apologia. There's another brand, you can pick Apologia or this other curriculum company. So it's not so much a Sonlight developed curriculum where you have all of the books and the worksheets and things like that. In high school, some of the bigger curriculum companies, science curriculum companies, take that over. But for us in my family, I'm really hoping to use Novari. I made a dedicated video about them, so you can kind of check that out. But there's a lot of options for high school, and it just kind of switches gears when you get to that point. So here's another one. So it says, you made me excited to do Sonlight Science. Are there also videos to go along with it? Yes, and I love the videos, but the videos are only for the programs that have been newly released with the new science standards. They're excellent, you guys. That's all we have used. We've only used the new stuff. And I'm a huge fan of those programs. Not all of them have the video lessons yet, but say my kindergartners do have video lessons and they love it. They think the science guy is so funny, but he also teaches them and is helpful. And sometimes on weeks when we just can't get things together, I'll just have them watch just the video. But I think we've only done that like once. But the videos are very helpful. And then it says here, also a similar question, piecing this together, are these experiment videos critical, or can I explain the experiments to my kiddos without the videos, just using the instructor's manual and the experiment book? Yes, 100% you do not need the videos. You have everything you need in your experiment manual, the big one that comes with all the instructions for how to set up your experiments. Everything you need is in there, 100%. So if you just want to roll with that, please do. Actually, that's what I'm doing with my older kids. We're doing Science C and they don't have the videos yet, so we just use the manual and I teach out of that. For my kindergartners, where we do have the videos, I start the video and then we go to our supplies and we'll do a bit of it. We'll go back to the video, we'll do a bit more, and then we'll finish out the video, sort of idea. And so I just use him to kind of teach the topic, but I pre-read the instructions from my manual and I collect all of my components from like the kit and things like that. So I kind of do it both ways. So yes, you don't need it. And then this one says, I know you said the experiments are amazing, but I just want to know if they correlate with what the kids are learning reading each week. So I think so. Honestly, I feel like most of them have. If I'm thinking back to this past 2 months that we've been doing our science this year, almost all of them, I think all of them have correlated in some way to what we are studying. Sometimes it feels like a little bit more of a stretch, but other times it's like spot on. This is what we're studying. This is what we're learning about in our experiment. And I really like that because I have shifted this year to doing science experiments on Saturdays. So that means we have covered all of our materials so far that week. And so we can even pull back the books and be like, do you remember this in our little rainforest book? How we studied this about the canopy and the understory and the forest floor and things like that. So we can bring back out those different spreads from our books and then we can do the experiment. So I've done that so many times. So yes, I would say they correlate. There might be an off one that doesn't correlate or it feels like a bit of a stretch, but I say that's the odd one out. Most of them have really correlated. Do you think the Sonlight science levels could stretch to larger age groups? I'd love to do one science with all my school age kids as long as I can. Yes, for sure. I have heard of people doing this because it really simplifies things, especially if you have a large family. I think your kids could learn from any of the levels. So if you're talking like maybe meeting in the middle or being on kind of the upper end of things, which is probably what I would recommend to make sure your older kids are getting a depth of understanding for the science for their age and it's appropriate for them. And I feel like your littles will pick up on some of that stuff. And then by the time the older kids exit, they'll be a little older and they can kind of go at a deeper level when it's their turn. But I feel like you could do that. I've chosen not to only because I'm a science nerd and I just really love science and my kids love science as well. And so we're balancing 2 science levels this year, K and C, and it's been just fine. We haven't had a problem with it, but I have definitely heard the recommendation that science is an excellent place to really combine the kids because you can either add more like documentaries and stuff for your older kids or just have the little ones sit in and kind of get what they get sort of idea. So that's my thoughts on that. Okay, so here's another question is, do you think the depth of the material is enough or appropriate for a second grader in your experience? She says she has a very science, math-minded son, and we are an engineering household as well. And so that's very much us. I have, like I said, a PhD in science. My husband is an engineer. We love science around here. Now for me, might just be my opinion though, so take this as you will. I feel like for these younger years, what I'm trying to get at, my goal for science for the kids is excitement. That's it. Like, I don't feel like I need to make sure that I have kind of a really rigorous science program at this point in time, only because I don't want to kill their love of science. I will follow their lead if, say, they're interested in maybe doing something extra, or we often add in the Kiwi crates or different outside sources for really that STEM and technology and building, those kinds of things. We'll add some extra stuff like that. But as for the science program through Sonlight, I don't add anything extra. I sometimes will do some documentaries or whatnot just because it's fun and my kids enjoy that, but not because I feel like they're not getting enough. But again, it depends on where you're coming from. I hold the belief that like until about middle school, I'm just going for excitement and enjoyment and connecting some dots and just being like amazed at the world we live in and how it's all interconnected and all of that stuff. That's my goal. So your goal may be different, and so your answer to that might be different. But for us, Sonlight is perfect to not be too rigorous or not be too in the detail in the weeds to kind of bore my kids, but not be so easy that we don't learn any science. Okay, so the next one is, does this curriculum present evolution as fact? Okay, let me get into this. And this actually is another thing I will be talking more in depth in that other video. So if you are curious about that, stay tuned. That'll come out in about a month or so. But here's the deal. Sonlight is a Christian company. Their view on how they design their science programs is to include a lot of beautiful literature and then to give the parents notes as to how to approach what is found in that literature. So it's not saying that Sonlight believes that because this Usborne encyclopedia talks about billions of years or something like that, that doesn't mean that Sonlight says that evolution is true. What Sonlight is doing is allowing parents to take that information plus the notes that are given in the instructor's guide and do what's best for them. There's not just one belief system within the world of Christians. And so I will talk more about that in the other video, but I would say that's how Sonlight handles it, is it chooses beautiful books. And then it gives you some notes for if those beautiful books happen to mention something that might throw a person off, depending on what they believe about the age of the earth, evolution, things like that. So I hope that somewhat answers it. But again, stay tuned for that other video. I feel like I could talk about this for a long time. So last science question though, is I've looked at Sonlight but can't find the time to do science 4 times a week. Do you think it's possible to fit it in twice a week? Yes, I totally do. A lot of people do it twice a week. And actually, I feel like it's almost easier to do science twice a week than history because there's usually less books. So within history, I feel like sometimes we'll have a number of different books and sometimes that's hard to double up, in my opinion. But science always feels like very easy to double up or catch up. That's usually kind of how I use it. If we kind of get behind, science is something that I can push to the next day and we'll just do 2 days in that one day. I've even done science once a week. Last year when we did science B, but I feel like science C, I'm not sure if I could do that for science C. It did get a little bit tiresome near the end of reading all 4 days in one day, but it's totally doable. I feel like there's definitely wiggle room there. Okay, so now moving into language arts questions. And so again, they're a hodgepodge of questions. The first one is, do you feel like a separate writing program is necessary to use along with level 2? Okay, so writing has been kind of my nemesis lately. Is just trying to understand how I want to teach it, trying to understand how it's best to teach, how to really meet my kids where they are and things like that. Now, when it comes to level 2, no. I don't think you need to add anything extra. I think the level 2 creative expression is perfect for that age, especially if you're working with them, you're partnering with them, you're helping them based on the needs of your child. Maybe your child doesn't need help, but I'd say most in level 2 do need a significant amount of help with the creative expression. I'd say most of the time you're still probably transcribing for your kiddo, like they're sharing their ideas with you and you're writing it down or you're typing it for them. And so I feel like if you are doing a lot of that good work together, I wouldn't add another program onto that. And a lot of those different prompts and those different types of writing that are being taught in level 2 will come back in level 3, level 4, those kinds of things. And you'll get more tools. Like in level 3, you'll get the diamond notes, which are how to set up your paragraphs. And so it's coming. That's coming, but for that age, I'd say just kind of stick to what is being instructed, be a big helper for your kids, and that will help them gain the confidence to keep progressing. But that's just my opinion. It probably just depends on your teaching style and the temperament of your kiddo. So anyway, that's where I'm at on that. And then, do you feel like you could jump into language arts at grade 4? Looking for new language arts for my rising 4th grader. Yes, definitely. So if a person here, I'm not sure if they're using the HBL or anything like that, or if they're thinking of just using the language arts, but I would say 4th grade is great because there's a potential you're either in language arts D or language arts 4, 3, 4, somewhere in there. You're kind of in that ballpark. And so it probably depends on a few things. And in this case, there is an assessment on Sonlight's website. Highly suggest you go take that because that's really helpful for figuring out kind of where your kiddo would land. And then also when you're trying to decide certain things, like I learned via the Facebook Sonlight group, which is a great group, just so you know, is that the language arts 4 is very much the same as the language arts D. It's just when you get to language arts D, it also corresponds more with the history Bible literature. And so it's kind of one of those things that you're very much on the cusp in that transitionary time that an advisor through Sonlight could really help somebody if they're right there. But I think for a new language arts program at level 4, you could definitely switch into Sonlight. And depending on how comfortable your kiddo is in writing and paragraphs and things like that, you could buy the Diamond Notes separate. So like I said, that came in level 3's language arts, but you can buy that separately, and you could even go through the Diamond Notes prior to starting level 4 or level D of language arts, just to kind of give your child that tool. That would be helpful too. So there's lots of different things to do there. And this is the kind of question I wish I could just sit down and chat with somebody about, but the advisors are wonderful too, like I mentioned. Okay, it says, do you use their language arts? If not, what do you recommend? I know a lot of people love All About Reading. So I have kind of on again, off again used language arts from Sonlight. And the more I have used it and dipped my toe back in, the more I have loved it. Now, it all depends when you're talking early years. So that person clearly is, because they're talking about All About Reading. It depends on your kiddo. I have heard great things about kids that are able to pick up reading pretty naturally. They have more intuition about it. Then the Sonlight Language Arts program is phonics driven, and it just gives it piece by piece by piece and teaching it very systematically and very simply. And I've heard people have wonderful luck getting their kids to read with it. I didn't, because my firstborn and my second were just not those types of learners. And so we have used other programs. I have used All About Reading. I have used Becca. I've used other things just with the reading aspect of language arts, but I've always kept the readers from Sonlight, and most often kept the creative expression or the early composition. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to make it fit your family, but the program itself could very much meet your needs. You just kind of have to test it out. That's my best advice, is just test it out and see. Maybe your kiddo would really thrive with the Sonlight Language Arts. And then this question, so for the Sonlight Language Arts, when you read a book, does it come with activities or workbooks to go with the books you read? So yes and no. So it kind of does. So with the language arts, there are activity sheets that go with it. And really those activity sheets are where you find your copywork. It's where you find your copywork application, which is usually the grammar and sentence structure and just kind of learning those aspects of language arts through the copywork application. So that's where you go back to that week's copywork and you look at a certain part, whether it's like a simile and metaphor, or whether it's commas or capitals. You will pull something out and teach that concept in the copywork application. And so in that way, you're using the books as good models. That's where you're pulling the literature out of, and that's the model for using for copywork and teaching from there. But there's also, when it comes to the books, so if you're talking maybe about, well, I guess either the read aloud, which is associated with history Bible literature, but I guess if you're talking Sonlight Language Arts, especially the early years, you could be talking about the readers, which are assigned to your child. And so for those, there are extra questions that are found in your instructor's guide that have to do with the readers. And that will be questions that help you understand if your child is understanding what's going on. And in those questions, sometimes you'll get more analysis type questions like, wow, what's the setting? Do you understand what's going on here with this kid? Would you have responded the same way to that? And so that you do have questions in that sense. So you have your language arts worksheet, which is, like I said, copywork application, as well as your writing. So your creative expression, it helps you brainstorm. Sometimes there's little flow charts for organizing your ideas and things like that. And so that's what the worksheet looks like. And then there's extra questions for the readers. And so I hope that is clear for kind of what comes with the language arts. And then it says, if you do narration with your kids, how do you make sure each of them has an independent voice? That's a wonderful question. And I feel like the obvious answer, and what probably most people would say, is start with the youngest first and to see what they have to say with it. I feel like there's other things you can do too, is you can have them draw. It really just depends on your child, right? It depends on their temperament. Are they able to listen and hear things? And also with narration, there's a lot of you kind of setting it up and maybe giving them some words, giving them kind of the name of the cities, the name of the characters, and helping them with some of that so that they can pull their narration together. It depends on probably how many kids you have, but you could also have like your firstborn narrate history and your younger kid narrate science and switch or something like that, that you could help them without their older siblings being able to talk. You know what I mean? Telling them that they are not allowed to talk. I really want to hear so and so's opinion, so let's just all listen to what they have to say. And so I think that could work too. So I feel narration is a wonderful thing, and Sonlight is perfect for narration. I like the options. I like that I can sometimes use narration and I can sometimes use like discussion questions. And so yes, that looks like that's all for language arts. And so looking at how much I have been talking, I think I will split this video into 2 parts. I'll keep this as like the science and language arts video, and then I will come back with part 2 and I'll talk about everybody else's questions about the history, Bible, literature. So stay tuned for part 2 for that. And while you're waiting, I would love for you to drop more questions. I can do another like mini Q&A based on any questions you might have about Sonlight. Like the Sonlight I use or the Sonlight you're interested in. I love chatting about it. So if you want to add some more Sonlight questions down below, and if there's enough, I'll make another video. So please comment down below. And otherwise, you know, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for part 2 because it will be coming probably the next video, I think. So hope you all are well, and I'll see you then. All right, take care.